Hello and welcome. My name is Laura Ann Mann, and I'm the Executive Director of the Muscogee County Library Foundation. We're the nonprofit that supports the public libraries here in Columbus, ensuring that they can be a vibrant part of our community. Thank you for joining us today. I really hope that you're taking advantage of all of the wonderful programming, virtual programming, and the resources that our library has to offer. Along with our Chattahoochee Valley Libraries, the Library Foundation and our Board of Directors are thrilled to present today Bakari Sellers. Please, if you have any questions for him, leave those in the comments and we will try to get them towards the end of the program. Now, moderating our conversation today will be Natalia Temegsen. She is an assistant professor of creative writing at Columbus State University, a playwright and a TV writer, and most well known as a Columbusite. We are so thrilled to have her with us today. And she will be moderating the conversation with Bakari Sellers. He made history in 2006 when, at just 22 years old, he defeated a 26-year incumbent state representative to become the youngest member of the South Carolina state legislature and the youngest African-American elected official in the nation. And, you know, that just tips the iceberg of his list of accomplishments. He most recently debuted his book, May of 2020. It's My Vanishing Country, a memoir, and that is where we will start our conversation today. He practices law in Columbia, South Carolina, and is a political commentator on CNN. We are thrilled to bring you Bakari Sellers. Natalia, take it away.
Thank you so much, Laura Ann. Bakari, it is so awesome to get to talk to you. Thank you for being with us today.
No, thank you for having me. And I want you to know, last night they had me in a tuxedo shirt and blazer because it was, a gala. But today I get a little bit more comfortable. Thank you for having me, Natalia.
You look comfortable. I'm glad you're here. I wanted to start, the book, first of all, is awesome. Thank you for taking the time to go to those deep places and then translate them and then share them. That I'm sure was not easy. And it kind of comes through how personal this is. And I guess I kind of want to start there. Legacy to me jumped out as one of the major takeaways or themes in your book. How do you think about legacy in terms of the way you received it, whether it be from your father or elsewhere? And then now as a parent, to growing kids and a figure in the community at large, how do you think about legacy as the person that's projecting it to others?
You don't think about it often. I mean, that's the key. I mean, you never want to, I tell folk I never want to write my own obituary. I mean, that's for other people. You don't go through thinking about what your legacy will or won't be, what people will or won't say about you. You just kind of live your life and try to help as many people along the way. You brought up a good point. When you're receiving it, though, from someone else, when you're receiving it from individuals like my father, or I say I'm a child of the movement. So for me, it wasn't just my dad, but it was Uncle Julian, Julian Bond, and Uncle Stokely, and Aunt Kathleen, like Kathleen Cleaver, and all of these individuals who, were so dope and meant so much, who were part of my village, because I'm a product of the proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. When you're receiving it, you just soak as much of it up as you can. And they set an example, and they allowed me to be on their legs when I was younger, as we learned so much. And so as a father now, I just want to share those same experiences. I want to be able to do those same things while you're in your daily work, trying to change as many lives as possible. You don't necessarily have to think about it. The only thing you need to think about is making sure that your child is present, that he can see or she can see and touch and smell and taste your efforts. I think that's the best way to transmit that legacy. At least that's what I'm trying to do. I don't know. When you ask me questions about parenting, I get lost because I really don't know what I'm doing. I just take it one day at a time.
Look, that's a different book, and you don't have to write that book yet.
It won't be written by me, certainly.
No, this is great. I mean, you bring up something that I wanted to hit on next with this idea of legacy, which is legacy in community. And that it's not, the one line of that is coming from the people that raise you, but, it takes a village. You talk about that in the book. What are the benefits to investing in your community as a citizen? Because I think we're a return on investment minded society on some level. And I want to know why you think it's valuable for people to invest in their communities.
Well, I think that it's valuable because the ROI is rich. Because the health of I always, when I speak in churches, I always tell folk, you can determine the health of a church by how many babies you hear crying, by their youth services, by the young people they have in the choir, by when you're there on Appreciation Day, by how many the young people are going to college or graduated or going to the military. And so it's that investment in you got to pour and I always tell people this, it's Hakuna Matata. Like the more you pour into, it's the circle of life. The more you pour into young people, the more they will then in turn pour into their communities. And there were so many people who poured into me, which is why I still every chance I get, not only represent Denmark, South Carolina, which is a big city, 3 stoplights and a blinking light, but also try to give as much back as I possibly can. I mean, you have to give back to those who poured in you so much. And I think that one of the ways you do that, though, is a little bit counterintuitive. I think that you have to, I mean, it makes sense, but you have to set a level of expectation too for young people and expect them to be great. And I think that also helps build a culture in your community. I tell folk all the time that right now we live in a culture of low expectation. You know this, Natalia. We live in a culture of low expectation, and what's worse than that, oftentimes you get what you expect.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. And you set an example in your life story for young people about how to be active, not just have an opinion and be willing to post it, but be willing to wear your shoes down. I think you said in the book till you had a hole.
Yes.
How big was the hole?
So it was on my foot. It was about this big. You gotta understand, I'm asking people to vote for me and I'm 21 years old.
Right.
So all I had on was first of all, I don't believe in buying. There are a couple of things, Natalia, this is me venturing off script, but there are a couple of things that drive me crazy about new age politicians. One, they just want to campaign on IG, drives me insane. Second thing is they buy all these doggone shirts. Stop buying all these shirts with your campaign dollars. I had 8 shirts. And then once you got done knocking on doors with me, you gave me the shirt back, right? When we were in a parade, I give you a shirt, you give it back at the end of the parade. I had 8 shirts, and every day I would wear my campaign shirt, some slacks, and my dress shoes. And I couldn't look like a child per se, although I was 21, but I wanted to knock on people's doors with some dignity. And those shoes, I still have them. Maybe one day they'll go in somebody's library.
You need to save those. Those are going to go in a museum, or someone could just make some like cool glasses maybe out of them. If that big. No, it's an interesting story because you were, quote, too young. You really were. And you didn't have the money necessarily. And, of course, this was before IG, like you say, but what is this? What do we take from this? I teach young people at CSU, some of them, I'm the last person they want to see because I also teach English 1101. Some of these folks that I teach,
the classes go up to 11?
No. So that's 101.
I was like, I've been at the 101 level. I didn't know they went all the way up to
the University System of Georgia. We might have feedback on the numbering system from Bakari Sellers. No, but freshman comp, right? These folks are out here, some of them are great, but some of them are like, I need to know exactly what I'm supposed to turn in. And I need you to remind me 3 times. And I need you to, there's a lot of hand holding expected, the low expectations thing you say. If you're a young person and there's something that you want to achieve right now, but you don't have much in your bank account, what do you have to say to that person that's trying to make an impact?
I mean, that's the easy answer. I mean, you can do absolutely anything you want to do if you dream with your eyes open. I think we have to order our steps. I think we have to provide young people with the examples. It goes back to Natalia, to this, which I think you would ascribe to as well, that you can't tell a kid he can be a Black lawyer if he's never seen one. You can't tell a kid that he can be a Black doctor if they've never seen one.
That's right.
And the young people, when you're in the classroom or when you're in their orbit, you don't have to talk at them that much, but you can just simply tell them that you expect them, if they want to be a doctor, to grow up and be David Satcher. I used to say Ben Carson, but I don't say that name no more.
You dropped that one, okay.
Yeah, if you want to be a politician, be Nelson Mandela. All right. If you want to be If you want to be a scientist, be George Washington Carver. And what you're teaching them is that in all things that you do, do them so well that no man living, dead, or yet to be born can do them better. You're teaching them about excellence, and you're setting that level of expectation. But you can change the world. I mean, right now, young people, we have the entire world at our, at our fingertips. Whether or not it's Twitter or Snap or IG, you can
that you were 6 shirts. Now you can't post pictures with the same 6 shirts on IG and expect to get that kind of
it depends. It depends. We live in a world where we have way too many influencers and not enough like change agents. So where you want to be? I mean, you want to be a change agent or an influencer? That's dope. Influencers get paid. I ain't mad at you. That's just not my ministry. And I want to be a change agent, and that's what I focus my life on doing. And my TikTok is dope. I mean, I go out and I do all
you have a podcast.
I have a pod. Everybody.
Tell them about the podcast, please.
I have a podcast. It's a good podcast. We've interviewed everybody from Hillary Clinton to Cicely Tyson. We just interviewed Cicely Tyson on Monday. We were the last interview she did before she passed away. It was, I mean, just being in people's orbit, the grace, the epitome of Black excellence is something that you can't imagine. Or maybe you can, I don't know. She just, when we say, Natalia, everybody watching may not understand this, but do you know when we tell folk, like when we say Kamala, for example, is our ancestors' wildest imagination?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was wild talking to Cicely. I was like, you're everything that people, you could literally put a period behind everything. Like you are everything. Period. But she was so strong too. That's why it just surprised me. But it shows you that we live in such a McDonaldized society. We got to do a better job of valuing the moments that we're in and living for these moments and loving like we've never loved before and crying like it's heartfelt and laughing with our belly. We got to spend more time doing those things that we get the most out of this thing called life.
Yeah, Bakari, you talk about that and it makes me think of your wonderful section on mental health in the book. I feel like I can say this on a Facebook Live because of the things that you put in the book and other Black authors and Black leaders have been saying about mental health of late. But I too suffer with depression and anxiety, and haven't even felt like it's something I can say publicly until more recently, because there is a necessary element to being a Black American to be able to stand and survive and sort of not lean into those weak areas. We are now at a position where
it's not weak though, Natalia.
Well, no, you're right. Say that. Go ahead, please.
That's what I tell everyone. Man, Natalia calling it weak. I wrote a whole chapter trying to make people feel strong about it.
I got to read it again. I just got to read it again. But that's why it's not that important. It really is.
It was. I tell people my favorite chapter I wrote was my most well-written chapter is the first chapter because you can see, smell, touch the South. I love that chapter. The most difficult chapter was the chapter on my wife, and the chapter that means the most is the chapter on anxiety because, particularly for Black men, we only think we can talk to barbers about our issues. And I wanted to make sure that, people look at me, they say I have a beautiful wife, beautiful family, great job, but, I still have issues with anxiety and how to get through them. And what did I say? That anxiety, it's a Black man's superpower. And,
right.
And we just have to treat it as such.
Yeah, I want to hear more about that actually, because it's just say more about that. The silver lining, right, of these things.
Great, big, bold question. Just continue. Go.
Because I was about to use language that again is not the right language, right? Like speak to the positive of being, in a state of anger or suffering or fear. What does that mean? It's a superpower.
It means you make the most of the moment. I'm the worst person to ask about where you're going to be in 5 years. My anxiety prohibits me from giving that much thought. Where you going to be in 10? I don't know. I'm worried about through tomorrow. I got to make the most of tomorrow. Do you know what my schedule looks like today? And you asking me about next week? So like, I use that. So I hope somebody, like my goal is during this hour that we have together, right, until 2:30, I hope that people get something. I hope somebody's like, that damn Bakari, man, he might not be worth a whole lot, but he said this, he made me feel this for this moment. Or even if they spend an hour and a half and it just takes them away from their daily task, that's it. Then I got to interview Nnamdi Asomugha at 3:00. His name, Kerry Washington's husband, as most people would know him.
That helps.
Then I'm doing a special with Gloria Borger at 4:00, and then I'm on Wolf Blitzer at 5:00, and then I have another event.
Sorry, my goodness, we are so lucky to have you today.
It's a day that ends in Y. The great American poet, Christopher Wallace, also known as Biggie Smalls, he said, "You sleep when you die. You sleep when you die." And so you try to do as much in this moment. I try to do as much in this moment to touch as many people and change as many lives. At least let me think that I'm doing it. It helps me sleep better.
That's really positive and an admirable way to think about it. So the superpower is being able to, on some level, normalize and humanize the experience of life and make sure people know it's okay.
And get as much juice out of this squeeze as you can.
Absolutely. You talked about, I think it might have been in that same chapter, but around that time, you talk about anger as being your inheritance.
Mm-hmm.
I heard a lot about righteous anger this year with the things that we saw with George Floyd, with the Black Lives Matter protests. Columbus had its first Black Lives Matter march over the summer during COVID. We all wore masks. But, there was a lot of what people called righteous anger, as though being angry is something that has to be qualified anyway. But your dad told you even righteous anger is not much without a plan, without action.
Right.
What should we be doing right now if we're angry with the way things look?
So that you frame the question in an amazing way, because the reason that I qualify the anger is because there is a whitewashing of our history in a way that disturbs me. For example, people think that John Lewis was this docile creature who just danced to Happy by Pharrell, right? And he just preached about love. They don't know that he was righteously angry in his history as the chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, right? They don't know that part of his story. People think that, you hear some people like Josh Hawley or Ted Cruz quote Dr. King, and you're like, no, not just the rhetoric, but the policies you espouse are the antithesis to who Dr. King was. And let's not act like he was well liked when he was here. I'm very reminded. I'm very much reminded that he had an approval that was lower than Donald Trump today when he was assassinated. He was in Memphis, Tennessee, fighting for the rights of sanitation workers so that they could get improved wages and better work environments. It was a huge storm in Memphis, Tennessee, and the sanitation workers all of the city employees were allowed to go home. Sanitation workers were not. Two sanitation workers, because they couldn't even see in front of them, stopped and got out under a little overpass or shed, and they were run over by a trash compactor. And that helped spur a lot of the activism in Memphis and that righteous anger in Memphis. So you ask, what do we do about it? You got to understand first that anger is not a sin. Ain't nowhere does it say that anger is a sin. But instead utilize that anger. Don't let it handicap you, but utilize that anger to empower you to go out and use your hands to change the world around you. Allow that anger to empower you not to give up, not to stop, because it's depressing sometimes, it's exhausting sometimes. And that anger can be that motivation to get you through.
Yeah, that's really good. Anger is not a sin. I love that, because sometimes it feels it hurts to be angry. You feel like this must not be good. How do I get past this fast? But sometimes it's a good thing. You bring up so many our rights movement of these play uncles and aunties that you had. Is it important, do you think, this is a kind of a crazy question, but who is Black history for? Should all Americans be equally invested in self-educating on Black American history? What's the benefit of having that in your life?
Who is Black History Month for, or who is the celebration thereof for?
The celebration thereof. How should,
well,
is this sort of,
I celebrate and encourage everyone to celebrate our history every single day. All of it, fully. Whether it's the enslavement or the bondage or the trauma or the lynching or the brutal rapes, or whether or not it's the Madam C.J. Walkers and Eli Whitneys of the world, whether or not it's the George Washington Carvers or the Ella Bakers or the Fannie Lou Hamers of the world. I celebrate our history in the totality of. I think a lot about Emmett Till, probably more than any 36-year-old man in 2021 should. It motivates me. It drove my father. It motivates me. I think a lot about Emmett Till because I see so much of Trayvon and Michael and Walter and Keith and Amadou and George, and Ahmad. I see a lot of them. I think about the 16th Street Baptist Church a lot too, because I see a lot of Clemente Pinckney, my good friend who was murdered in Mother Emanuel AME Church with 8 others. And so I think about those things a lot. And I was speaking to an institution earlier today that was in Indiana. I had a speech in Indiana earlier today. It's amazing. I can go from Indiana to Columbus in a matter of moments and not even leave the dining room. I didn't even have to put on pants to do it. I just went from one city to another.
Don't stand up.
And, people were like, well, why do you keep talking about oppression and bad stuff that happened? I was like, you act like I'm telling you something that ain't a part of our story. I'm not making this up. Like, if you have a problem with that history, which is accurate as I tell it, then let's make sure that we don't relive that. I think that's our challenge. Yeah. And so it's tough out here, but I just attempt to speak our truth. And that's what I encourage everybody to do.
Yeah. Well, it's challenging too when, I know you talked about education yesterday, so maybe you can bring in some of that, but it's challenging when if American children aren't being given opportunities or seeking out opportunities to learn more about Black history, Black America, then it's not necessarily something that's as easily accessible in school, right? And so
let's pause there. Let's pause.
All right, go ahead. Let's go.
Our curriculum in this country commits violent acts against people of color by the way that we teach and don't teach the history of this country. And I think that has to be addressed. And I know y'all are going through a lot in Georgia with your curriculum, and you got some folk who don't want you to teach whole truths. They're afraid of. Now, I'm not, so let me also be clear. I'm not for taking down all the statues and writing Black Lives Matter on all the streets. I'm not trying to make the person who sells yellow paint rich. I am, I'm not saying that you got to change the name of a school from Abraham Lincoln. Or George Washington. That's not me. I mean, my quest for justice is a little bit different. I think is a little bit more rich in terms of policy. If that's your task, then I will cheer from the back row, but I will never dare take credit or stand in the front. But I do think that it's important that we teach a full history. I think it's important that we know struggles, we know, and the reason being is because so many people confuse prejudice with patriotism. And it's amazing when I get on TV and tell my story and people want to question my patriotism. And I'm like, the blood of my family literally runs through the soil of this great country, literally. So why can't I push this to be a more perfect union? Why can't I challenge this country that I love, that my family loved, that we've given everything for, that my father almost, and three people who look like him, gave what Abraham Lincoln called the last full measure of devotion? Why can't I continue to challenge and push for it to be great and fulfill its promise to us? I mean, I don't have any apprehension about saying that I want justice to be a verb. I want life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But even more, I want like peace and love. I mean, maybe that's my youthful naivete, but I still believe in those things.
No, you are preaching to the choir right now. But, you know, it's important that we remember the why. I feel we're living in a moment where the definition of words that are sort of, there are almost opposite ways to interpret any of these main values or principles, to your point about prejudice becoming a type of patriotism. But reclaiming those things that are important that we value and redefining it or clarifying the definition in the way we live, speak. I think you're right that is our charge. It can be difficult and tiring sometimes, but it's important. And you know, you get a lot of the education from your dad, you know, that this legacy he hands down, but you attended Morehouse also, right up the road. And tell us about that. You know, in fact, this is coming from an audience question as well. It was one that I had for you too, but Alethea B asks, how did your time at the Southeast Region NAACP office shape your time at Morehouse and Atlanta?
I loved it, man. First of all, with all due respect to Columbus and Savannah, and even my good friend Harvey Davis and Augusta, Atlanta politics is different. It's a special type of politics in Atlanta. It's all Black, for one. It's a lot of wealth, maybe not wealth, but it's a lot of, I guess, for the lack of a better term, wealth. A lot of power, a lot of control, and a lot of pettiness. But I learned so much from that NAACP in the Southeastern region and working for Ms. Bonella, because I was able to learn the intricacies of politics, and even something that actually helped teach me before I worked for Jim Clyburn and before I worked for Shirley Franklin, or along those same lines, ended up teaching me the number one value proposition I learned about politics. And I tell everyone that the most important currency you have in politics is not a dollar or anything like that. The most important currency you have is relationships. And I learned that through my time at the NAACP. It taught me a lot about building those relationships. It taught me a lot about, and I actually went in with the question, is the NAACP still needed? I wrote a paper on it. Was the NAACP still needed? And I knew the answer in my heart was resoundingly yes. Right. But I wanted to go and make sure and figure out. And the answer was yes. And this is how they were going to do it, even through the fundamentals of organizing, et cetera. So it was a fascinating experience that I got so much out of, and still have friends today.
And just so everyone that's watching knows, add your questions in the comments as well, because we have time for those. But, you know, say more about that time in your life. Specifically, I'm wondering if, as you went into your political career, the experience of being an alum at an HBCU, did that serve you in a very unique way? What's the benefit of having that type of a college experience?
I mean, HBCUs they prepare you for, the 21st century global economy. They prepare you for the world ahead. They place a crown above your head and tell you that you got to go grow into it. I mean, whether or not it's Yogananda Pittman, who is the new chief of the Capitol Police in DC, whether it's Raphael Warden, the Senator, Reverend, Doctor.
all of that.
all of that. who's a Morehouse man, whether or not it's Joyce Beatty, who's chair of the Legislative Black Caucus, who's a Cheney State alum, whether or not it's Kamala Harris, who is a Howard University alum, or whether or not it's Stacey Abrams, who they all kind of rode in on the shoulders of, who is a Spelman alumna. HBCUs are back in the forefront of individuals' mind and thought when it comes to politics. What we do know for a fact, though, is that HBCUs throughout time have produced the overwhelming majority of Black professionals, lawyers, doctors, architects, engineers, etc. But now people are able to see them on this playing field, and it's just an awesome time to be an HBCU grad. I tell my kids, I mean, look, you can go to, Daddy will pay for you to go to any college or university you want to go to in the entire country, as long as it's an HBCU.
That's awesome. That's so great. No, I mean, the Howard moment right now is a moment.
They're insufferable. They are insufferable right now.
Yeah, I know. I've had so many homecoming invitations, but I've never been.
You never been to a Howard homecoming?
No, I've got to go.
Howard, North Carolina A&T, and Spellhouse are the best three HBCU homecomings. A&T's homecoming is special too. Howard's is, that DC flavor is a lot.
Right.
You come to Atlanta and people, I've brought some friends down. Angela Rye was talking about it the other day. She went to a Morehouse. She went to school in Washington State.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so she came to a Morehouse Spelman homecoming and she said she didn't know what to do. She hyperventilated. She got out the car.
We're lost in the sauce.
Exactly.
I love it. That is so fun. Politics. I have some politics questions. I have one thing that I would love to hear you say more about, which is the Mayo story. Mayo Gate, might I call it? This is a story when you went into Hilda when you were campaigning. Are you getting like nauseous hearing about it?
Yeah, I hate my name.
I can see your whole body language is changing.
I don't even know why you had it. So, I mean, it just shows you what you do. I went to Hilda, which is Barnwell County. I had a slither of Barnwell County in my district, Barnwell County, South Carolina. By slither, I mean very small. I had 3 precincts total. One of those precincts was this place called Hilda. John Matthews, who was the state senator there, she said, you just need to go to the little country store over there and go in, have you a mayonnaise sandwich and drink, like, I think it was like a lemonade or something they gave you. And I was like, nah. I can't stand it. It was like 35 cents and maybe it was like a Chihuahua or something. So I went over there and I did it. And I sat down and talked to everybody who came in there. And the night of the election, the power went out. On June 13, 2006, the night I won, the power went out. So the results were coming in slow. They had to be like hand counted. I was up by like 1,200 votes. And that's a lot of votes. And we knew we could win. But there were like 3,000 people in Barnwell County. We were like, we know we're not going to win. What if we got beat by like 2,000 votes? So we got beat 40-8. So I count those 8 votes because I ate that mayonnaise sandwich. I hate that question, Natalia. Move on.
No, but for real, like, I'm not going to move on because there's something to it that is like blowing me away. I mean, it stuck with me maybe more than anything else. First of all, you call it almost an allergy. I'm not going to go into it, but it's like a repulsion, I understand, for you. But you ate the sandwich. Correct. And you say at the end of the story, this is politics too.
It is. I mean, all of that is. When I was knocking on doors and going into people's homes and, some of them would tell me to go to hell. Some of them would invite me in. Some of them would try to get me to date their daughters. It was the retail, I call it the Jimmy Carter politics. And it's something we've forgotten how to do. Everybody wants to have an Instagram page and look good and have some celebrities say that they endorse them. But it's the retail politics which matters the most. And eating that mayonnaise sandwich was just a testament to, how much you wanted to win, but even more importantly, that you would meet people where they are, which is essential in what we call politics today.
Well, it strikes me too as something almost reaching back, like almost old traditional or old fashioned maybe, but my husband is from Eritrea and the culture in East Africa is very deferential to one another. Whatever you want, I will get the check. I will beat you to the ground to make sure that I get the tab. Or, you just make yourself so small in an effort to bond and connect with what that person needs. But it's just so counter. So often we have that conversation like, oh my gosh, you're so American. You know, because like I would be like, I don't want to do that. That's not something that I'm into. Let's find something we can agree on, you know, but
In
politics
politics, you called it old fashioned. I call it Jimmy Carter. Call it what you want. It's the way that you're successful. I mean, there are a lot of folks who still believe that defund the police is the reason that we lost elections. And I'm like, no, the slogan sucks, but that's not the reason. The reason is because we campaign poorly. And so one of the things that I remind folks is that you got to go back and knock on those doors and do that work necessary.
That's so real. All right, we have some more audience questions. Ava L asks, how do we teach our grandchildren Black history?
I mean, I think it's simple. I think one thing you don't do is shield them from anything. Young people are brilliant. They're smart. Don't shield them for anything. Let them learn as much as possible. Let them soak it up. Let them see it. Let them touch it. So, I mean, with your grandchildren, I mean, maybe not now because the Rona won't let us be great, but as soon as the Rona lifts up, man, take them over to Memphis, Tennessee, and let them see the Lorraine Museum and let them go in and see where King was shot and learn the story of who King really was. Take them to Philadelphia, Mississippi. In Philadelphia, Mississippi is where Goodman, Turner, and Cheney were brutally murdered and lynched. You know, take them on a tour and let them see and take them to the, oh man, what's the
EJI Museum?
No, Pascal's. Take them to Pascal's in Atlanta, where we used to have the civil rights meetings, et cetera. So these are all things that I think it's a lot easier if you allow people to see it and touch it, and they can teach you a lot too. They can put you on, what is it? American Skin, the new movie on Netflix, or 13th, the Ava DuVernay film. I mean, there are a lot of ways that we can learn. Just make it interesting and do as much as possible.
Yeah, great. More audience questions coming in. Glenda M asks, from your studies and writings, do you think or feel that the tide is turning for us Black folk? Can you see hope forward?
You know, that's an interesting question. I believe it was Nixon that said trust but verify, if I'm not mistaken. People want to say this time is different. We'll see. Feels different. But, you know, to be extremely blunt, you know, are white folk going to still feel the same way in 6 months that they felt last summer or feel today? I mean, that's the question. I mean, we've missed this moment before. I mean, after 1955, after a young Emmett's face was on the front of Ebony magazine, we missed the moment then. The Evan Pettus Bridge was the first time that on national news that we've seen Black folk a prohibition on, I said a prohibition. First time we had seen Black folk being beaten that way on national TV. 1968, we had the assassination of King. We missed that moment. Even 2015, when Barack Obama sang Amazing Grace at my friend Clemente's funeral and missed every note. But he still sang it, but he missed every note of Amazing Grace. but we missed that moment too. So I don't know if we have faith that we're going to meet that moment, but you know, we'll see. Yeah,
well, clearly we can't do it alone. I guess is part of what you're saying too. And so it's a momentum, but it's a group thing. Donna R asks, any advice for first-time authors who have shared their life experiences through their work? I just released my first book. Congratulations. And it feels like I put my heart on display for the world to see.
Well, don't release it during the middle of a pandemic, but I know that's tough. Me and you both. I don't know if yours came out during a pandemic, but that's tough. You know, you should feel some solace, some appreciation about telling your whole truth, and people will learn from that. People will learn from your story. Now share it as far and wide as you possibly can. I think the key, it's hard right now, but the audible versions of my book are doing well. The digital versions of the book are doing well. And I would just encourage you to continue to share your story at every opportunity you get. Barbara Jordan said that she wasn't going to write a book until she had something to say. And so you wrote a book, so you must have something to say. Now it's time for the world to listen. And maybe you can captivate them and find that moment so that they all can listen.
Awesome. Frederick H. asks, Mr. Sellers, how do you define the caste system politics in the Black community?
I think I'm the wrong person to ask that question to, because there's an amazing book out called Caste, C-A-S-T-E, which actually gives us the history of race, the history of caste in our own communities. And so what I would do if I were you is, instead of me answering the question and giving you my opinion, I'm trying to, Isabel, I forgot her first name, is go out and pull Isabel Wilkerson's book. I would tell folk often that my book was good. Isabel Wilkerson's book is not even in the same stratosphere as mine. It's that much better.
Mm.
And she wrote extensively on that. And I think you can learn so much from me telling you to go read that one.
Awesome. Lorraine Moore, sorry, Lorraine M, I know her, asks, do you see yourself returning to the political arena as a candidate?
Yes, soon and very soon. I don't know when that's going to be. My goal is to run for Congress in the 6th Congressional District, which is Jim Clyburn's district. We'll see when that time happens. That's
awesome. Very exciting. Great. We have questions about what you're working on now. In the meantime, what's going on? What's your plan?
I have a children's book coming out in 2021 in January around King Day.
Congrats.
It's called Who Are Our People? I was tired of having little purple people on TV and blue people for my kids to watch and read. So now they'll have some black and brown people, as you hear in the background. I have another adult book, which I just submitted the outline and table of contents for, that I'll spend the next 5 months or so writing and finishing up. Trying to be a good lawyer. But again, the number one goal I have is to raise these kids and be a good husband. Full-time job. Nobody told me getting married was a full-time job, Natalia.
No, I got about 5 full-time jobs.
I got to add that to my resume. I'm gonna put that right smack dab at the top. They're gonna say, what's your work experience? Married.
That is, I mean, every year you should be getting a promotion of some kind, right?
Exactly.
It is. It's wonderful. This is really great. You know, I wonder if you've read Brittany Barnett's book, because now I'm kind of freestyling. Have you read A Knock at Midnight?
I have not read A Knock at Midnight. Did she write the other half?
This is her first book.
Oh, no, I haven't. No.
Okay. Well, it just sounds like there's a lot of wonderful books in the ether.
Well, I will. Let me make a suggestion. I will, and I thought I had them here. Cicely Tyson's new book is amazing. I read that this past weekend. And Charles Blow's new book is fascinating as well. And I think, Natalia, as an educator, you will definitely enjoy it as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I will definitely look into that. Well, I think that we have time for probably one more question. And I would just love to hear, you know, what your takeaway as far as what you want people to feel from this book. What was the main thing you were hoping to impart?
I wanted Black folk to get a sense of pride, and I wanted white folk to get a sense of understanding. I just think that we retreat to our silos so often that many times we only seek out news and opinions that reinforces our own. And we have to do a better job of empathizing and sympathizing with others. And, you know, for far too long, rural meant white, working class meant white, urban meant Black. And I wanted to toss those things on their head. And so, you know, I just told my truth and attempted to add some insight, and it turned out to be a decently received book.
That's great. And we have actually one more question that we've got to squeeze in from Reagan.
Okay.
Asks, in your book, you wrote about the lack of compassion some of your colleagues displayed in the legislature. Mm-hmm. How do you stay motivated in this era of extreme politicization and polarization? And what advice would you give to an aspiring politician?
So those are two different questions. One, I can diagnose the problem we have in this country, and that is we have an empathy deficit. That's the problem we have. So we have to work through figuring that out. I experienced that when I was in the State House, and it was the beginning of the kind of untethering, you know, after Barack Obama elected, the kind of overcorrection in 2010, the Tea Party, the visceral nature in which the response was to Barack Obama's election. And so we have to do a better job of communicating and talking to and not through or by each other. For young people who want to get involved in politics for the right reasons. And the right reason, which is that you want to change the world. You ain't gonna never be rich being in politics. You ain't gonna ever really be famous in politics, but you can really effectuate change. I mean, you can help people every single day. And I would suggest go back home and run where you're from. I think those people would be very proud to have you as a member of the House or Senate, as a member of school board, city council, mayor, and pour back. I guess we're kind of wrapping up where we began, which is those give back to the people who gave you so much.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And, here in Columbus, we are so big on that. I came back swearing I would never live here a day in my life again. But, that's such an important circle to come back, because you find that you can contribute something and you can leave your imprint. So we are just so grateful that you were able to make the time.
And, well, thank you. And Laura Ann is, let me say, she's one of the most dynamic type A personalities I've ever met.
I had to find a way to get that in there.
I know I had to.
Well, Bakari, thank you so much for your time. And Natalia as well, thank you for coming back to Columbus. I am the same way. I said I will never come back here. And here I am. I don't ever plan to leave. So I think that all of us can work to eliminate that empathy deficit that Bakari just spoke of. We all have work to do. And I think everyone watching and those who will watch in the future, I hope that you will work towards that. And I want you to know that your library is here to support you. We have resources for you. And I just hope that you're taking advantage of all that the library system has to offer. We do have copies of Bakari's book, which is My Vanishing Country, a memoir. We have the ebook version, which is how I read it. We also have the hardback copies. So I hope that you will put your name on the holds list and that you will take advantage of all that our library has to offer. Thank you for joining this conversation. Thank you, Bakari. Thank you, Natalia. We hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you.